One Friday morning in 2009 in Surrey, England, a body was found inside of a wheelie bin. The rubbish men were just doing their job. They were coming along to take wheelie bins, putting them into the back of their lorries and driving off. But they came across this one wheelie bin which was extremely heavy, and they refused to actually take it. They just said, no, it's too heavy, we're not going to take it, and they carried on to the next house. 3 weeks later, the landlord actually came by and he discovered a human foot hanging out of the wheelie bin. This is the shocking true story of Melanie Warner, a 30-year-old female who was discovered inside of a wheelie bin. This true story will send shivers down your body, so make sure you watch to the very end and hit subscribe if you want to see more true crime videos. Melanie Warner was a 30-year-old South African female, and she was dating a guy called Peter who was actually German. Melanie and Peter started dating very quickly after they both met. They both were fond of each other. They both kind of fell for each other really fast. They both thought that each one was perfect for each other. And in fact, they actually got married very quickly after they started dating. On the outside, this marriage was perfect. No one knew there was any real issues in this marriage. But in fact, the marriage wasn't perfect. If anything, it was far from perfect, because Peter had allegedly had many affairs on Melanie, and multiple times he kept seeing other women all the time behind Melanie's back. And at first she had no idea about it, but it became so frequent that actually Melanie did find out about one of his recent affairs. In 2006, Melanie actually confronted Peter about one of his recent affairs. They had a huge argument about this affair. Peter was denying everything, and Melanie was confident that she found out about this affair. She was arguing, and they were arguing together for ages, all day long, and nothing really came of it. Peter wasn't agreeing to it, Melanie wasn't backing down, so she decided to go and get some rest. She went back to her bed and put a sleep mask on so she could just kind of forget about it and get some rest, because she was really stressed about this current affair she just found out about. At this point, this is where this story instantly gets crazy, and again, this is very shocking, but whilst Melanie was actually asleep in her bed, Peter must have been so angry that he was accused of having an affair that while she was asleep with her sleeping mask on, he actually came up to her while she was in bed with a griddle pan and actually whacked her around the head while she was asleep. This pan was extremely heavy and did some serious damage to Melanie. But not only that, he then got a plastic bag, put it over Melanie's head, and then put her body in a sleeping bag so no one would know where she was. So at this point, he's just killed his wife with a griddle pan. He's panicking because he doesn't want to get caught with this. You know, he wants to get away with this. He doesn't want anyone to know. He's just put his wife's body in a sleeping bag, and he's just hit her around the head with a griddle pan. Obviously, he's been angry about being accused of having an affair. That's why he's done this. And now he's really starting to panic of where he should put her body and what's he gonna do, which is where this story gets even more twisted. Peter actually went online and ordered a large lockable freezer where he was going to actually plan on keeping Melanie's body in, so the body would stay in one type of place and wouldn't send off smells. Buying a big enough freezer so he could freeze her body so no one would know where she was and she was frozen. Now, of course, neighbors are going to wonder where Melanie is gone. They're going to realize she's not around no more, and a lot of people are going to start questioning where Melanie is gone. So Peter actually thought of a plan to go and tell his neighbors that, do you know what, they split up and she's left the country and they're not really going to see her around no more. That was one of the first things he did after he obviously murdered his wife. He went to his neighbors' houses and just made them aware that they're not going to see Melanie around anymore and she's left the country. That is what he told all of his neighbors. Now, he told his neighbors that Melanie was out of the country and they split up, but he told her friends and her family that she actually had a freak accident, and he tried everything he could do to save her. He tried CPR and nothing was working. So he's told neighbor one thing and then told his friends and family completely different. At this point, Peter was panicking. He didn't know what to tell anyone else. Melanie's family and parents actually were coming back to the UK, or tried coming back to the UK for obviously their daughter's funeral, but Peter had something different in mind. Peter told them not to come to the funeral, and in fact he was actually going to go to them to prove that their daughter had passed away. In fact, what he did was fly out to South Africa to meet Melanie's parents and took an urn with him and told them that she'd been cremated and that she's gone. But this is just crazy because the urn wasn't Melanie. The urn was actually just ash from his barbecue. This story is just sickening and gets even worse from this point onwards. Time went on and Peter carried on living his life. He actually had over 3 years of getting away with this. He carried on, went back to his normal life. I assume he started dating other people. He carried on with his work. He carried on doing everything in his normal life. After he just murdered his wife, his family now are aware and think she's been cremated. Everyone kind of turned weirdly a blind eye to this. Like, no one really questioned anything. In fact, for 3 years straight, no one really knew. But obviously Peter still had her body in the house and needed to do something. And what he did next is sickening. He wanted to move out of this property, but he had a big package which he needed to get rid of, which was obviously Melanie's body. So he decided to actually put this body into the wheelie bin outside of his house. Melanie's body was under this house for over 3 years, and Peter was just praying that if he put this body inside of a wheelie bin, that the bin men would come along as normal, doing their daily routine, and take the body and put it into a landfill, and that would be it. He'd be hands off with the body. No one would ever find out ever again. This went on for 3 years. He kept this body for 3 years and froze it, and decided when he wanted to move out, now was the time to get rid of it, and that was how he did it. He put it in the wheelie bin and prayed that it would get removed. But it didn't get removed, and this is actually what happened. The bin men came along doing their normal routine, doing the bins of the neighborhood, and they refused to take the bin. They refused to take the bin because it was so heavy. They tried putting it, but it was just ridiculously heavy, and they didn't have enough time to mess around with bins that were too heavy. So it actually then took 3 weeks after Peter had moved out for the body to be discovered. So not only was the body then in a wheelie bin for 3 weeks, it actually was found by the landlord, who came along 3 weeks later and found Melanie's foot inside of the wheelie bin hanging out. After the body was discovered, obviously the landlord rang the police. The police came along and investigated everything. Keep in mind this was 3 years later, and their first suspect was obviously the partner, Peter. So they went to Peter and kind of questioned him, and he didn't deny it. He actually said it was self-defense. But Peter forgot one major element of self-defense, and that was Melanie actually had a sleeping mask on. So that proved that Peter wasn't acting in self-defense, and Melanie was asleep and was out of her body. He didn't take the sleep mask off of her. He actually left it on the body, and when the police discovered the body, they would have realized that she was asleep in this at the moment that she passed away, and there was no way she was fighting towards Peter. So Peter completely messed up his story and found out straight away that he was lying. When this case obviously went to jury, Peter claimed that he lost the plot and he was acting in self-defense because Melanie hit him with a rolling pin, and he accidentally acted in self-defense and lost the plot, and he claimed it was manslaughter, not murder. After a very tiring court case for Melanie's family and also a long case in general, Peter was found guilty of murder and now has life in jail. This truly is a shocking story of Melanie Warner and how she was for 3 years frozen, and then the way she was left this world was inside of a wheelie bin. Is really disturbing, and I really, my heart does go out for the family. This was the last moment caught on CCTV of Megan Newton just moments before she was murdered, and you won't believe what happens next. In today's true crime story, we're covering Megan Newton, who was an 18-year-old girl from the United Kingdom in Stoke-on-Trent. Megan was an 18-year-old girl. She had blonde hair. She liked to go out a lot with her friends and drink, go out for brunches. She liked to chill with her friends a lot. And on this evening, on the 20th of April 2019, she was about to go out as she normally would. She worked in a fish and chip shop, so she worked up until late, and then she finished her shift. She started getting ready to go out. You know, like I said, she always likes going out with her friends, so it seemed. So as any other normal night, it was the 20th of April 2019, and she decided that she would finish her shift and go out on a night out. She was caught on CCTV getting home around about 11 PM, going in from her work shift, getting changed from a uniform into her going out clothes, and just after 11 PM, she left apartment, it seems, to go out on the night out. Now she went out, went out with her friends, she went to a few bars, had a few drinks, really had a good night. Like I said, she really enjoys going out with her friends. Her friends had a good night with her, and she stayed out for quite a while. You know, she went out at 11 PM. Well, she left around 10:45 PM, but she went out around 11. Stayed out to early hours of the morning, and just kind of drank as most 18-year-olds do on nights out. Once she'd finished drinking, she obviously wanted to get home. Now this is where the story twists, because this is very disturbing. and this is where the story gets really deep. When she was in school, she knew a guy called Joseph Taylor, a long school friend from many years ago. And as she was leaving the nightclubs and the clubs and the bars, she went to the taxi rank to get in a taxi home because she obviously had no lift, so she needs to get a taxi home. A normal procedure, it seems to be, for her after a night out. So she went to taxi rank and stood there waiting when she bumped into Joseph Taylor, a friend from many years ago in school. They were good friends, and obviously they had a chat. They were both talking. They were both extremely drunk, and they were both talking in this taxi rank for a while, waiting for a taxi to come for them both to get home. So when Joseph was there and we're talking to Megan, apparently he was telling Megan about how angry his parents were going to be because he was so drunk. He was so intoxicated. He had way much to drink. It was too late in the evening, and if he goes home now, he's probably going to get in a lot of trouble. You know, he's a teenager. He's drank too much. He's probably going to wake everyone up in the house. So he was telling Megan all his problems, you know, how he shouldn't be able to go home, and he's probably going to get told off. So Megan, with the kindness of her heart, basically said to Joseph, look, you can come back to mine. You know, you can stay at mine, let the drink wear off, sober up, and then get up in the morning, go home, and just tell your mum and dad that you stayed at a friend's house and you fell asleep and forgot to tell them. That was the plan. So Joseph was very appreciative of this. There's a CCTV footage of them both getting in a taxi together, as you can see here. And they went back to Megan's house. Again, they were long school friends. Nothing other than that, nothing like romantically. It was just literally friends helping out friends. So they got a taxi and headed back to Megan's place. So it seems that a taxi got back around about 4 AM. There's a CCTV footage here of them getting out the taxi and heading back towards Megan's flat at around 4 AM. So they had a good night. Megan's been out for a few hours. Joseph's been out for a very long time too. And they're going back to Megan's house, as you can see in the CCTV, so they can just go to sleep, wear it off, and that was that. Their apartment complex had CCTV, and this is the footage right here of them walking in through the apartment to Megan's room. And this CCTV footage was the last video ever seen of Megan. After these two individuals walked through that door, Megan was never seen ever again, and she was about to be brutally murdered in the most disturbing, disgusting way. At 5:54 AM, there's a video here of Joseph leaving Megan's room without Megan. He was leaving her apartment with keys that were her keys, not his keys, and he was walking out, caught on CCTV around 5:54 AM, and he went outside and basically threw the key, Megan's key, just in the yard, just threw it away, kind of where she lives. He didn't even try and hide the key. He just threw the key kind of as he walked out, almost like kind of weirdly, like he didn't care. I don't. No one really knows. It's kind of weird. He just threw the key and walked off. Like, if you've murdered somebody, people try normally and hide the key or take the key with them. He just left the key kind of where he was. Very strange, and he was caught on CCTV doing that too. Now, police, obviously after this all came out, looked through CCTVs as well, and they found this video where Joseph Trevor was seen to be walking down the road, and he was looking at his hand, almost like a sign of guilt. You can see here, he was caught on CCTV just basically looking at his hands, and on his hand you can see blood. So he seems like he's either panicking or he's just making sure there's nothing on his hands, which there clearly is. So at this point, he's trying to go home. He's just committed a massive murder, and his mind, what was going through his mind right now is unknown, but he's just killed one of his best friends from school, murdered her, and he's just left the body there, threw the key away, and just walking home. A few hours later in the day, a neighbor was walking around Megan's apartment, especially outside, and they found a key on the floor. The key had loads of blood stains all over the key. So this neighbor rang the police straight away. They tried locating why the key was on the floor, and as you guys remember, Joseph threw a key on the floor. It turned out to be obviously Megan's key, and on the key was loads of blood on it. So the police investigated, and they realized this key is most likely to a room in the apartment complex that Megan was living in. So they went to her apartment, knocked on the door, she wasn't answering. So it took investigators to kind of basically like get inside to find out next, which is very disturbing what happened. Megan had been SA'd, she had been stabbed 9 times in her neck and her back, and she was also strangled on that evening, Joseph and Megan went back to her apartment. This wasn't an accidental murder. This was almost a rage of some sort. To stab somebody 9 times, strangle them and SA them is extremely brutal. And my thoughts go out to all of the families and the victims in this story. It really is disturbing. I'm so sorry to hear about this. But later on that day, Joseph was basically at his house, his parents' house, when the police came. Obviously they looked through CCTV and realised that he was the last person with her, and he was arrested immediately of the murder of Megan. After the police arrested Joseph, he was taken into the police station and he was sentenced to the minimum of 22 years in prison with life. This was the true story of Megan Newton and Joseph Trevor, one of the most disturbing stories I've ever covered, as well, because of all the CCTV footage that really shows all of the in-depth, as you can see, all the in-depth trueness of this story. You can almost watch it unfold, which is so disturbing. And again, for my thoughts to all the families who have had to see this go on, it makes it, bring it to life so much more, and it makes it much more disturbing and hard to watch. But that's it, guys, for this true story. If you want to see more true crime stories, make sure you subscribe to my channel, turn on post notifications. I post true crime stories every single day. So if you are a true crime junkie and you want to keep up with all these stories, I try my best to break down these stories as fast as I can, but without missing out any of the most important details to these crimes. I'll see you guys in the next video.